multiple declarations coming from Israel, and you might hear something in the Israeli media, and the problem is you'll hear the opposite from Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's something not new, because Benjamin Netanyahu, whenever there's any sort of diplomatic progress, he tries to hide it, deny it, and have certain actions on the ground so that he doesn't show that there's any significant, diplomatic progress or any Israeli concessions to Hamas and the Palestinian side, although he couldn't cover anything today, but only deny from his office. So what happened exactly? Firstly, there was a report in the Israeli media that, hold on a second, things are going to go ahead. Channel 12, based on an official, said mediators showed willingness, everyone showed willingness to continue with the ceasefire, and Israel is showing willingness to abide by the humanitarian clauses. What else happened? The Israeli army broadcasting. Today they said an agreement on allowing caravans, modular homes, and heavy engineering equipment, which we were talking about yesterday, it has been agreed upon that they will be entering Gaza immediately going into the Gaza Strip. Shortly after that, everything was visible. Yesterday we started to see the tents going into the northern part of Gaza with unprecedented numbers of trucks. Today, over 800 trucks in one day of aid, of tents, modular homes going in, caravans going in, heavy engineering equipment, tractors, excavators, all of that going into the Gaza Strip, indicating that the work that has been happening with the mediators is proving to be fruitful. It's succeeding on the ground. And Axios, they also had a report quoting an Israeli official saying that we conveyed a message to Hamas that we're committed to implementing the agreement if the movement adheres to it. So we're seeing statements, we're seeing confirmations from politicians, from the Israeli army, but there's outright denial from Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu's office denied, actually. Netanyahu denied, no, there has been no progress, no breakthrough whatsoever, and I ordered Israel Katz, the defense minister, to have a plan, and he indeed had a plan, this proposal, to go back to the war in case Hamas does not adhere to the agreement. And he's denying that there's any breakthrough, but the things are happening on the ground. Why are you denying? He's denying because he doesn't want to make himself appear to be a defeated man who is submitting to the demands of the Palestinian people and to Hamas. And he also doesn't want problems with Smotrich and co., who have been celebrating and hailing the grotesque ethnic cleansing statements by Donald Trump and his preposterous propositions against the Palestinian people. They were on a high. He doesn't want to ruin that party. However, on the ground, everything is happening. It's not only that, they're having other breaches to cover up the fact that there is progress. What did they do? They had an attack in Khan Yunis. They just targeted a home. There haven't been casualties reported so far, but they just hit a home, alongside, of course, other breaches that they had. He's doing that to cover up what's happening on the ground. What's happening on the ground indicates and proves that Israel indeed submitted to the demands of the Palestinians, and they are starting to allow everything back into Gaza whilst compensating for the shortage of the previous period, as requested by the spokesperson of Al-Qassam Brigades, Abu Ubaidah. And it wasn't only that, we had a confirmation from Hamas. Hamas came out and said, no, we are agreeing to continue to implement the ceasefire agreement, including the prisoner exchange. They said that the mediator talks were very positive, the gaps were closed. These discussions, of course, came after successive Israeli violations, but the meetings that we had were very positive. There have been understandings on the implementation of the agreement in all its aspects. Who started to abide by the agreement now? It's Israel. Hamas were abiding by the agreement. Hamas were abiding by the agreement to the T. It's Israel who had 470 breaches and thought they can get away with their continued breaches now. So Hamas is even saying that there's progress, and we're clearly going to see a names list tomorrow being published. That's going to be sent from the senior people in Qatar to Dadi Barniha. Al Thani is going to send it to the head of the Mossad, the list of the names of the Israelis who are going to be released on Saturday. All of that indicates that there has been progress. Now, going back to Benjamin Netanyahu is denying. He's saying that no, there's no breakthrough, nothing is happening. Katz is also saying the same thing. No, we're prepared for war and Hamas need to adhere. And what Hamas only said is, by the way, we need to get into phase 2 immediately. So Hamas is not only pushing for the implementation of this, said urgently, talks about phase 2 will need to continue. Benjamin Netanyahu is hiding all of that because of the intensity of the Israeli defeat, this humiliation. And that's something very problematic for people like Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, narcissistic psychopaths, self-centered, egoistic, only concerned about themselves and their image, them being dictated by the conditions and by the demands of a group of people fighting them inside of Gaza. And that's not only coming from the confirmations that we had from Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is facing intense criticism inside of Israel, with senior figures in Israel criticizing him heavily. So we had two very interesting articles. One of them was published in Ma'arif and one of them was published in Walla in Israel. The first one was published by the previous head of the SHABAK, Yoram Cohen. What did Yoram Cohen say? Yoram Cohen said Netanyahu is doing things that even dictators wouldn't do. Netanyahu is a crazy prime minister. He's harming and risking the national security of the state of Israel. And he also mentioned the fact that during his period, Benjamin Netanyahu tried to ask him to do things that were not legit, they were not legal. And he stated his refusal, showing concern again about potentially taking out the current serving head of the SHABAK, and the criticism of the resignation of the previous chief of staff of the Israeli army, Herzi Halevi, saying we all remember how much pressure and how much humiliation he faced, that man. And he said things about Benjamin Netanyahu like anyone he doesn't like, he will do everything to remove him from power. If he could remove everyone, the legal advisor would have long since removed them from office, even the Supreme Court staff. And he also mentioned certain things when it comes to the corruption and the previous corruption charges against Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's someone who worked with Benjamin Netanyahu side by side. He served under Benjamin Netanyahu, and that's in the Israeli mainstream media. Clear criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu. Then there was a more severe criticism coming from a senior figure who was in the Israeli army, Major General Giora Eiland. Giora Eiland made unprecedented statements in one of the interviews he had recently, saying that Hamas can dictate to us. Hamas can dictate what we do, in a massive criticism to Israel and its genocide inside of Gaza. He said the picture is that Israel failed miserably in Gaza. We must start from this point. Otherwise, we create expectations for things that are not realistic. The defeat in the war in Gaza, according to two criteria that are not political and not populist but professional. One way is to check who achieved their goals and who did not. The second, even more objective way, is which side succeeded in imposing its will on the other side. This is coming from Israel, ladies and gentlemen. This is not just some analysis. These are people who were top figures in the Israeli army. He said, look at the hostage agreement. Israel opened the Rafah crossing, withdrew from the Netzarim line. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians went back to the north. It allows not only food and water to Gaza, but also brings heavy equipment that is the beginning of reconstruction. Hamas can dictate to us in phase 2 an agreement in which, at best, we will receive the rest of the hostages. And that is important, but we will also pay with the mass release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Israel will have to agree to end the war and a withdrawal from the perimeter or the buffer zone that Israel is currently still occupying, which is approximately 700 meters in its majority parts inside of the Gazan territories. And it didn't end there. He said if Israel believes that only military pressure will bring results, no military pressure will bring these results. If you occupy the Strip and the civilians remain, Hamas will remain too. Apart from receiving terrible attacks against the occupying force, you will not gain anything.